The following program is rated PG-13. Parental supervision is advised.
All right. Let me get my clothes on here and put my pants on. Nobody's naked, right? All right.
Poseidon, the ruler of the seas and all that dwell within them. His rule over the oceans is unquestioned. There are those who serve him with tridents and with infinite knowledge of all things submarine. They are known by many names: coners, weaponeers, the merry men of Sherwood Forest. But by Poseidon himself, they are called the Subvets.
Man battle stations missile for WSRT. Spin up all missiles.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines.
These two great gentlemen are dedicated to a proposition which was true in my time, just as it's true today. Be excellent to each other.
The crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger honored us for the manner in which they lived their lives. We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them, this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye, and slipped the surly bonds of Earth to touch the face of God. Thank you.
That Condition 1 SQ for WSRT spin up all missiles. Welcome back.
Release of nuclear weapons has been, well, it's not authorized now. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It seems like it was negated this week.
Yeah, for
good reason. And
WP-185,
thankfully they are. Yeah, last week I was ready to launch nukes, but this week it looks like things are looking up. Thank the Lord in heaven. I know.
Well,
for those of you that are religious,
be released anyway. So
yeah. I'm just talking about what I said last week. You're like, you ready to launch already?
It is the Subvets. I'm Dave,
and I'm Eric,
and we're glad you are with us today as we talk about things submarine and veterans and other stuff as well. So last week we had a pretty good show. I thought we got into Project Azorian at the request of a listener. And
I did a great show.
I got some follow-up questions on that. And I think we were able to answer the questions offline. So I don't want to answer the questions because the questions were pretty technical type stuff. But I did want to clarify a few things about that show last week if you heard it. Number one, everything we talked about was hypothesis. I wasn't there. Eric wasn't there. All the people who were there are dead. So it's all hypothesis based on 3 books: Blind Man's Bluff, The Silent War by John Craven, and Red Star Rogue by Ken Sewell. You combine those 3 together, you get the story we told you. And that's it was purely hypothesis. This is what could have happened. I'm not saying I even believe that that's what happened. What I'm saying is this is what may have happened. Did
you get some texts that were, like contradicting kind of what we said? Or
No. In fact, I got several emails from one guy who was questioning some of the source material. And some of the source material I like, some of it I don't like. How do you feel about the source material? Blah, blah, blah. And I did get a text about, Dave, that story sounds fantastical. And it does. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It is a fantastical story, but it's just a hypothesis. Nobody knows what happened. It's like the Scorpion. Nobody knows what happened. A lot of theories, a lot of people willing to tell you what they know happened, but they weren't there.
Be debated till the end of time. And I'm sure, with the Connecticut, that's probably going to be debated 20 years from now. That's just what submarine's all about. I mean, it's a silent service for a reason. So, we are not here to release any kind of OPSEC material, of course. That's not our aim here. But we're here to talk about submarines and we just like you said, you take your sources, you do your best guess, and we'll tell a story. If people want us to talk about something, well, we're going to talk about it using the best things we could find. And then you get your own personal theories too, of course. Everybody does.
And some of this will be our own personal theory. There were things that I understood when I was in submarine school about Scorpion, and it was discussed. There was a day when I was in sub school where sub school is very positive. It's very upbeat. It's, hey, submarines are great. You're going to love this. But there was one day where they kind of set that aside. And I don't know if it was in the curriculum or not. I don't know if it was just our instructor. And it was kind of like, here's all the bad stuff that can happen. And you need to know about this. And we talked about Thresher. We talked about Scorpion. And what I really recall was the discussion with Scorpion, because there was some hypothesis put forward about Scorpion that still I know people believe to this day, that the Russians sank her on purpose.
Right.
And there was some indication that there was evidence of this. Mm-hmm. Now, I personally have never seen that evidence, or in this particular case, as it is, heard that evidence, but I've talked to people who claim that they have. Mm-hmm. Do I believe them or not? I don't know.
Yeah, and when you form an opinion, that's exactly what it is. I mean, I believe the Russians sank her, but I have no evidence to back that up. I mean, that's exactly what you said. It's stuff that I heard in sub school. It's stuff that I heard, senior leaders above me talk about, chiefs and officers, because that's stuff you talk about this stuff on patrol. You got nothing else to do. You hash these things out, and you form your own opinion about what happens in these particular events over time. So it is what it is.
One of the most interesting phone calls I ever got was before, in 2018, we held a reunion for the Michigan crew from the 80s, the pre-com and the crew of the 1980s. We held a 35-year reunion, whatever. And we focused primarily on gold crew, pre-com and gold crew. But I had a couple of the blue crew guys call me and ask if they could participate and that sort of stuff. And I was talking to one of them on the phone, and he was telling me about his time on, was it the Andrew Jackson? Was that, we had two boomers called Jackson, right? Stonewall and Andrew.
Andrew, yep, two of them.
And he was on Andrew. And he was telling me, as nonchalantly as I'm talking to Eric right now, he was telling me about I don't remember how we got on the topic. We got on the topic of the Titanic and Bob Ballard. And he was telling me, as we all know now, because the Navy has said, Titanic's discovery was a cover-up. It was a cover for what Ballard was really doing, which was investigating Scorpion and Thresher.
Right.
Right. And so he made some comment to the effect of, how do you think they found it so fast? We knew exactly where it was. We used to regularly use it as a navigation check transiting the North Atlantic. And he said it like off the cuff.
Like it was nothing.
Right. And I'm like, wait a minute. What do you mean you knew where it was? So we knew where it was. It was like, it was a surprise to us when they announced that they found it. Now, again, do I believe him? I don't know. I mean, he clearly believes it. So am I kind of obligated to believe him? Or do I just have to go, well, that's just another one of the submarine force legends that all the Atlantic Fleet submarines knew exactly where Titanic was? It does lend credence to the idea that Ballard's mission, the discovery of the Titanic, was a cover story. And we know that it was, because the Navy has acknowledged that. But I read Ballard's book about finding the Titanic. I kind of got the impression that, he actually did search for and find the Titanic. He didn't know where it was, even if the Andrew Jackson did.
It's interesting too, because I know we're the submarine experts. We like to say that, but we're also handicapped. Being a couple boomer sailors, I mean, there's two different missions here. You have your fast attack missions and the boomer, which one is you hide, and the other one is that's exactly what it is. It's a fast attack, and it does other super neat stuff. So the things they get to see and do are clearly different than what we get to do. Is what we say is 6 knots to nowhere. I know other people have different speeds, but that's what we call it. Some of the people call it 4 knots to nowhere. And heck, we even debate that too. That's funny, isn't it? But it's so like the bonefish fire. We had a guy that came over from that. He was a ganger, and he said some things about what happened with that. So there you have direct information. Some people get direct information. There's people that trained me or probably trained you that in some way, maybe just a few people away, were there. Part of what happened with a thresher, part of what happened with scorpion, that have probably more direct, valid knowledge of what happened. And things just get set on control. But, it's just like the old exercise you learn as a kid, with the communication checks. You say the one thing, and as it goes down the line, it gets distorted over time. So
that's how I knew I was going to become kind of a journalist. I don't consider myself a journalist, but I guess I technically am. Because even when I was a kid, I would double check things and I would ask questions. Are you sure that this happened? And then I would go back later and have people repeat their stories to make sure they still matched. And it's very cop-esque or reporter-esque, I guess, trying to keep that. But there were surprising things. I mean, I've talked to people who claim that they were depth charged, people that, obviously we don't talk about it much, but people that have bumped into things that they shouldn't have been bumping into and that sort of thing. But how much of it is real? How much of it is imagined? I don't know.
Right. And the whole idea of being a silent service, I mean, we kind of talk about it maybe amongst ourselves a little bit, but you never give the whole tale because you're not supposed to.
Right.
It defeats our whole mission.
In today's world, things do seem to be changing a little bit. And I think that started, I was surprised. I will tell you that I don't know how surprised I was. Shocked might be a better word. When the book Blind Man's Bluff came out, because I had people calling me, asking me, Dave, have you seen this? Now, I had been out of the Navy probably 10 years at that point. I don't even remember when that book came out, but I had people calling me, asking me about, hey, is this book true? I hadn't even seen the book. I didn't know that it was
already hitting you.
Yeah, I had no idea what it was. And so, of course, I went and got it because it was, one of those things that, hey, it might be nice to learn what I was a part of. But at the same time, people ask me all the time, is this true? And I just say, well, it's true that it was written down in that book. So November 98, it came out. So I'd been out of the Navy for 7 years at that point. And that's what I tell people. It's true that it was written down.
Well, I got another good example, and it's not submarine related, but today when we record this podcast, which is July 28, 2022, January 28, 2022. I don't even know where I'm at. But today, the 28th, is when the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up. Now, I grew up in Florida, and so where I lived at, half the people were working out at NASA as technicians and engineers, and the other half was building Epcot Center. So, back then, everybody, on weekends, car hoods were popped up. People were, having beer popped open, and everybody's helping each other out. People talk. This is before the internet, when people actually talked in person and weren't walking around staring at a phone all the time. But, I had I wouldn't say direct. I had second or third hand knowledge of what happened to the space shuttle. It took a while, I don't know, maybe a couple of years before they came out and admitted that management was the problem for the space shuttle disaster happening. My dad was a quality insurance engineer out there. He quit out there because they were asking him to sign off on things that he knew wasn't right. And he worked, he certified gauges, and he was a metrology, so the science of measurement. So, he signed up on the quality assurance on the gauges of the flight deck, which is pretty important. And you shouldn't be gapping those out so you can meet a launch deadline. Because back then they were trying to launch, I don't remember what it was, 4 or 5 missions a year. So he knew based on management before we even got into what the O-rings that were defective. on the SRBs, that caused that disaster. But he knew management was the problem before him. So that's just another example. But where were you at, Dave? I mean, I was senior or junior in high school. I mean, I saw it live. I saw it happen. I was standing out there watching it because we all, when we were in school, we got to go out and watch it, and we watched the thing blow up. And it was just, people's reactions at that time. It was unbelievable to see it.
What's oddest to me about all that is the realization that what caused that was essentially go fever. It was the idea that, we know what we're doing. We don't need to hear, which literally January 27th, 1967 was the cause of the Apollo 1 fire.
Right.
So literally, 20 years later, they do the same damn thing again. NASA does. And it costs more lives again. We were actually an off crew. We were getting ready to start team trainer. And I think it was our last day before team trainer because we were actually in the office. I don't remember what day of the week it was, but I know we were getting ready to go into team trainer because we were actually in one of the classrooms of the OCAP building at Bangor here, going through weapons procedures.
Right.
And it was, there were some changes to some things. And so we were making sure that we were up to date on stuff before we went into team trainer. Cause we had a tradition of trying to out trainer the team trainer folks. I mean, we always wanted to go into team trainer and be heavier on the system than the team trainer folks were. And so it kind of became this friendly competition between us all.
Right.
So we were in the classroom, and missile technician, first class by the name of Leroy Smith, who's a very good friend, or was a very good friend. I haven't seen him in 30 years, came into the classroom, and his exact words were, because we're submariners, so we don't put things gently, we don't put things politely. His exact words were, "Space teacher is no more." And we all looked at him like, "What the devil are you talking about? We're in the middle of something here." And he looked at us and said, "Challenger just blew up." And we were out into the main room there where there was a television. And so we didn't see it live, but kind of like 9/11, you got to watch it over and over and over and over again, in super slow motion and that kind of stuff. And it was, what I remember more about that day was Reagan's speech that night, which was fantastic. It was so typical of Ronald Reagan and his ability to communicate with people. And it was perfect.
For the moment. Yeah.
And what I remember after that was USS Michigan, had a mission to do and a job to do. And we kind of put everything aside and we went and did our mission and our job. I've talked to people who were assigned to the Canaveral area. And I have a very good friend who is very good friends. Again, this is secondhand information, with someone who was an NR1 or a Navy diver. Might have been a diver, but he was working around. The NR1 was used extensively in the recovery of the wreckage. Mm-hmm. And he says that guy is PTSD'd, that it's almost destroyed him. What he went through to recover that was just incredibly hard for those guys. So, for me, it was just one event. There were a lot of events like that while I was on patrol that later on would be important, but at the time we just compartmentalized them and went on with our job because that's what we had to do.
Mm-hmm. So I'm being stationed down at Cape Canaveral. I mean, so, these stories are a little bit older, of course, by, 95, 90. I got there in December of 94 is when I checked in. So, that wasn't I keep thinking that was a long stretch of time between the Challenge disaster and then, but it wasn't really. But, you heard stories exactly what you just said, the NR1 being used and pieces of the Challenger coming in on barges and people transferring that stuff over. And then you hear stories, that they found some of the bodies. I don't know if they recovered them all. I mean, like I said, and there's more to this story that we know. There's more than just the O-ring. There's more than just the manager. But yet what I do know, there's some old missile silos out there from when they tested, I guess what was it, the Titan 1, the first rockets we used for nuclear weapons. They buried and sealed all the parts of the shot. After they did their investigation, they put them all in a silo. I know exactly where it is. I mean, I'm not going to say where it's at because I don't even know what's called, but I do know it's all stuffed in there to never see the day of light again. And it's covered up for a reason. I mean, they're covering up, parts of the story that they, for whatever reason, they don't want people to know. So, I mean, it's bad enough with the leadership and stuff like that. But so that's passed on second and third hand to me. But like I said, we're just using the space shuttle as another example of the submarine disasters that we've had.
And NASA has acknowledged that it's public record now that at least, as I recall reading the thing, at least 3 of the astronauts did survive the initial explosion and rode that cabin.
I was going to say that.
So
that's what I saw. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to break anything.
I mean,
on anybody
covered up. That's not. I don't expect. I say this, and I say this very cautiously. When Michigan had our engineering casualty, I was there. I saw with my own eyes what happened. Okay. Later on, a high-ranking official of the ship told me that didn't happen. And my reaction to that was, look, I don't care what you tell squadron. I don't care what you tell group. I don't care what you tell sync pack. But don't tell me that I didn't see with my own eyes what happened.
What happened, yeah.
And I got to be honest, that was a seminal moment for me in my career because, look, I'm willing to play the game. If you want to tell squadron that, if we all agree that this is what we're going to tell squadron, fine. I'm on board with that. I don't have a problem with that. Mm-hmm. But don't lie to me about it. That's for me. Some reason that was my line in the sand.
Right.
And
I mean, stuff like that creates a stigma. I mean, it's mind altering when you see a disaster like that. So yeah, I'm not going to say which boat just to keep it, because I know it never made it to the media, but some of us have been in some pretty bad fires. And one of the boats I was on, we was in port, thank God, but I don't think this would have happened out at sea. Well, because you wouldn't be welding out at sea. At least I wouldn't think so. He's welding upper level guidance and the little beads, is coming up. He didn't have the drop blankets and it was going all the way down the side. And we had all the chem wipes stored down lower level next to the missile tubes and lit the dang things on fire. And it's exactly like the trainer said. It got, the smoke gets dense quick and it's scary. And the funny thing is, you learn all the classes about all the fire extinguishers and what to do, whether it's, oil fire or, paper fire. Now, none of that matters. AFFF, PKP, it all goes on the fire when that happens. And, and using, like you had little sandpaper spots on the floor, so you knew where you at. You're like, well, thank God that I got made to memorize that because it saved people's lives that day. But stuff like that sticks with you for the rest of your life, when you're in a pivotal moment like that.
I qualified November 18th, 1984, USS Michigan. Got my Dolphins on the 21st, presented on the 21st. And I felt like in some ways, I knew that was just the beginning of learning. I really did. And I never really trusted damage control equipment until I went to damage control school year and a half later. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like it was in sub school. In sub school, you sort of knew you were safe, right? Okay. When I went to basic training, they put a fire in a Quonset hut down on 32nd Street in San Diego, and we had to come in and put it out. And it was impressive, but it wasn't scary. When we went to this damage control school, the guy said, "I'm trying to kill you." And he did. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time that I finally believed that EABs would work underwater. It was the first time I actually used an OBA the way it was intended to be used, learned how to actually do things the hard way. And of course, when we had our casualty later on, it was amazing to me, number one, how confident I was in the equipment that we had. And two, how second nature it had become. It was like, I didn't even have to think. We just We know what to do. And you run drills on the sound powered phones, and you run drills. They're just entirely Charlie Foxtrots. I mean, they're just a mess. Everything is wrong. People are screwing things up. When it happens for real, clockwork. Perfect.
If it was a fight like the train. Yeah.
If it was a drill, they would have gotten a 4-0. I mean, it was perfect. And the fact that I'm here is a testament to that. So I have to it's what I tell kids today when I talk to them today around here about, what's the most important thing about being a submariner? Damage control. And we saw that with Connecticut. And as I've said before, you can take every person on that ship, Connecticut, and you can say, who trained you? You can go to that person and say, who trained you? And who trained you? And you can trace that all the way back to the very first USS Holland. I bet you could build a tree from every person, everything we have learned, everything we have experienced, everything we have trained on from day one, help save that ship. So if you're wearing dolphins today, you had a part in that. And we should all be justifiably proud, because just like when one of them goes down, it's all of us going down. And when one of them comes back, it's all of us coming back.
Yeah, it's and to that, when people ask you about, what it's like to be underwater, aren't you afraid of it? An enemy submarine out there. So I'm not worried about an enemy submarine. I'm worried about the water trying to get the people tank. And that submarine's trying to kill me every second. The minute that I let down, my guard, it's trying to kill me. And that's what the dolphins are for. And that's in missile techs. We prided ourselves back on the old boomers anyways. I'm sure they do try it too. But we prided ourselves in damage control. Most guys report to the mess decks back then, for damage. It broke out of the equipment, and then they were deployed from there. But missile techs, we just jumped in our equipment. We went right to the fire there. So we either prepared to go aft, or we were prepared to go to the torpedo room. In this case, we fought a fire, and because we prided ourselves in damage control, that's why that fire was put out. I mean, it got, like I said, it got pretty scary, but we got it out before it got out of hand, and that's why it didn't make the news. And I guess you're right. The way people train you, those trainers. I mean, the scariest one for me was the fire trainer. The guy at the time, and they have a really cool trainers now. I've seen some of the newer videos, but back then they would hold up a fire helmet. They're like, if you put your head up while you're inside this tube that's on fire, this is what your head's going to look like. And he wasn't kidding. I mean, they throw you right in there. It's like you said, they're trying to kill you. So the flood trainers I absolutely loved, because growing up in Florida, swimmer and surfer and stuff. But man, that fire. Whew.
I loved the idea of the flooding trainer until the first time I got in it in New London. And I went to sub school. I went to sub school in January and February. And that water, as I understand it, comes right out of the Thames River. And it was freaking cold, man.
Very cold.
And I did not like that. So we did get another texter who wanted to ask us a question. And maybe, I guess we've kind of answered that to some degree in the last few minutes, but it was kind of sarcastic. He started out sarcastic, but he didn't end up that way. we bill ourselves as the submarine experts, because we are.
Right.
And he
absolutely
sort of challenged that. Why do you guys think that you are the submarine experts? I mean, what is it about you that makes it? And then he kind of admitted that. He said, what I'd really like to know is just, who you are. How did you get to where you are today? So I thought we'd spend just a few minutes there, because I know you're burning deep right now. Eric, you can't tell looking at him right now, but Eric is a boiling chasm of flame right now.
You don't know how that happened, Dave.
But before you get to that, tell us a little bit about who is Eric Ryle.
Who is Eric Ryle? So I joined in the 80s, towards the end of the Cold War. So even though I was on 3 different vessels, 2 submarines and 1 submarine tender, and I did do 6 years at sea time, which makes it sound like I made senior chief or something, did a 20-year career. That was not the fact. I just got caught up with the fact that these things were decomming one after another. So the Grant, I was on the longest. I checked on board the Grant end of 88, 89, or first of 89. and I did 5 patrols on that one. And then I checked on board the Stimson after that. I took the grant. We did Stratoff in Charleston. That's when I checked off board and went to the Stimson at that point. And I did 1 patrol on that. And both times, once you're not making patrols, you're still going to sea. So we were doing, midi ops, playing fast attack, that kind of stuff, handing out listed dolphins like candy. That's a whole nother subject I could be angry about for, a whole show. But anyways, then I went to the Canopus right after that because I made a deal with the current detailer, which changed after that. Because on the grant, I found out that, about Port Canaveral being a duty station for missile techs. And I made that my goal. So I took the 2 years extra sea duty, 6 years total, and went to the Canopus. And, I remember checking on board. There was a guy named Ricky Krogan. And when I got in there, he goes, "Welcome to hell." I'm like, what's that all about? But, I had a series of things. I had some good people that, taught me leadership and events that happened. We could talk about it on another show, but I took the Canopus duty and I made it mine. I mean, I practically took over that ship. And towards the end, I literally did. I was in charge of the supply department right up to DCOM, for his weapons department anyways. So, and then I went to Cape Canaveral. I mean, we had to remind the detailer at that point that a deal was made. And since I worked so hard on the Canopus, I had to have the command master chief call up and threaten said detailer and say, the orders need to be faxed here. And like, I'll give you 5 minutes. And then I went down to Cape Canaveral and 11 years and some change, close to 12 years. I got into a car accident. And, I almost completed my tour there at Cape Canaveral and that ended my career before I was able to rotate back to the fleet. Very depressing time. It was very hard for me to work through. That was my PTSD. I wanted to make a career out of the Navy. I never intended to get out. But that's just the way things worked out. So got into communications through some, there was these places in Cocoa Beach, that we went and drank beer at that might have had professional dancers. That's what we'll call it. Professional dancers were there. Anyways, we met a guy that overheard us in a talk, and he goes, "I need all the electronics." Guys, another guy, friend of mine, was getting out at the same time. So my friend got out before I did, just a few months before I did, and he took him up on it. We didn't believe, because the guy looked like a long-haired biker dude. He said he was an engineer for NEC America. And he was telling the truth, the business card. So, Pat Cleveland, my best buddy, he got out before I did and went up and trained with the Japanese in fiber optics. And I went up there, and next thing you know, we are field engineers without the official, I would say, degree credentials. Going out testing and turning up fiber optic, what we called ADMs at the time. So they were OC48 rings. And then I got that experience and went to work for Sprint, and I've been in communications or some kind of IT work to that extent ever since then. So that's been very beneficial for me. And I credit my military service for my ability to be successful in those career and there's these different jobs I've had over the years too.
And now he runs the Subvet.
And now run the
web. So the day I graduated high school, I was 17. I went down to the MEP station in Salt Lake City and enlisted. Over my parents' kind of objection, they had to sign off because I was 17. They didn't want to, but they figured if they didn't, I was just going to wait till I was 18 and do it anyway. So I have long had a love for the Navy, ships, Navy. It's hard to explain. I can't really explain. I learned to sail when I was 6 years old, and I've always loved being on the water. It's just something about me. Joined the Navy, ended up in the DEP because they couldn't take me right away. So I didn't actually go to basic training until October. Went through basic training in San Diego, which is becoming more and more of a rarity of us San Diego people anymore. But anyway, I didn't know you could go. I didn't know you could go anywhere else until I got to San Diego. They said, "Why'd you come here?"
Same thing with me in Orlando.
No, there was any place else to go. I was very naive. I was a son of a minister, 4th generation minister. I was raised in a very conservative religious family. Temperance, the world's largest temperance organization. Drinking was something unheard of. I learned words in basic training that I'd never even heard. It was amazing to me. It was like a whole new world. I mean, it really was opening up. I intended initially to go into flight. I wanted to fly, and I kept failing the flight physical because I can't see. Stay with me because I know what you're thinking already. So in basic training in those days, you filled out this form and it had 5 rates on it. And then you would start at the top and you would go through the process and you'd fail that because of the eyes. So I'd go back for another flight physical, fail it because of the eyes, all 5 of them. 5 times I failed this physical. So then they said, pick 5 more rates. I said, submarines. We're going submarines. So I wanted to be a sonar tech. I really did. I love audio. I love sound, all that kind of stuff. Sonar tech, FTG, torpedoman was on my list. And the number 5 choice was this thing that nobody, not even my chief, who was a submarine qualified EM, nuke, EM, ET, I don't remember. Anyway, he didn't even know what it was. SWSE. Nobody knows what it is. All right, what is the submarine rate? Put it down. So, of course, I go back to the sub physical, and the guy looks at me and says, "You again?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Stay here. I'll be right back." And I'm thinking he's going out to say, why is this guy here? He's already failed, blah, blah. But I took advantage of the opportunity. Right. And when he came back, I passed the eye exam for submarines. Read into that what you will. I memorized the chart while he was gone. So I got these 5 rates on here, and I end up SWSE because that was at the time they called it Creo Group A. So Strategic Weapon Systems Electronics. Ended up in Dam Neck for A school. Finished first in my class. It was a miracle. I don't have time to go into it all, but got a pilot course for Mark 98 Trident out here in Bangor. Took that because I'd spent the summer up here before I joined the Navy. Loved this area. Came up here, went to sea school, ended up on the Michigan for 3-4 years and loved it, man. This is what I was born to do. I loved being on Michigan. I loved being a submariner. I loved being on that ship. I hated the day that I left it, but I always figured I would be going back to another boat. But when I left, I had a sea school coming. So I ended up in Poseidon Sea School. And from there, I was scheduled to go to the tender in Scotland. But by now, things were changing, as Eric had said. Boats were being decommed. Scotland was kind of slowing down at the time. And ultimately, they left me in Dam Neck as a Poseidon instructor. So I've never even seen a 640 class submarine, 616, 627, never seen one. And I end up as a Poseidon fire control instructor at Dam Neck. Stuff happens, life gets in the way. As Eric had a car accident, I like to think I had a similar disaster. I got married. And
that's a whole nother topic here.
Right. But as part of my agreement in getting married, there was a tacit understanding that I would go to seminary. So I got out to go to seminary for the same denomination that my father was a pastor of, which turned out to be a bigger disaster. You will notice today that I am not a minister, nor am I married to that person anymore. So it didn't work out very well for me. But ultimately, I went into media, radio, as both producer and on-air talent. Very much enjoyed it. I left that in 2015 because radio was changing and I didn't like where it was going. And so I did something that very few people in radio do. I walked away from it. Most people, there's a saying in radio, you don't really work in radio until you've been fired. Well, I'm happy to say I've never been fired. After a decade in radio, I said, you know what? I don't like where this is going. So if that's where you're going, you don't need me. And we said, okay, you're on your own then. And I've been happy ever since. I've raised my son here. And in 2017, my wife and I moved back up here where I met her while I was on the boat. And since that time, I've just been I call myself a consultant. What I do is I meet with people who want to do podcasts and stuff like that. And I talk to them. I don't charge you $3,000 like some people would to do that. In fact, I generally do it for free. So
Thanks for not charging me, Dave.
If you're interested in that sort of thing, drop me a line, dolphindave@slipperyfish.com. So that's how I got to be where I am. I don't think I said I'm a fire controlman. I'm not a missile tech. Fire controlman, FTB 1SS. Strictly by sorcery and favoritism, because I consider myself to be an FTB 2, because I was the second class fire controlman, was the perfect job. I mean, it just really was. So that's where I wish I was. In all of that, though, I'm not nearly as angry as Eric is. Eric, freaking angry.
I am angry. I was a missile tech Swazi as well. Dave, you missed out on Scotland, even though I hated it. It was freaking cold all the time. But the fish and chips and the beer was fantastic. A lot of good stories over there. So I did get to experience that. Got to experience Charleston. There's a lot of things I got to experience very fast as compared to other people that did normal rotations over a 20-year career. So got to do and see a lot of things. Just wanted to add that. So anyways, last week, we started off the show kind of like we just started on that, where I kind of rescinded my thing about, well, I'm not ready to launch nuclear weapons just yet. So there seems to be some sanity with this thing going on in Russia, but it's not. I mean, we can go in. I mean, you probably read this story too, Dave. There was a meeting between Putin and some European countries, and they met and they actually talked this through, talked some sanity, because these people, although some of these countries are part of the NATO alliance, well, they just don't want Europe mowed over like it was for World War I and World War II. And that's what it's kind of trying to turn out to be again. So they talked unilaterally without President Biden and his crew in the U.S., which kind of makes us make it whatever you will. I don't know how I average that, because I found that news story. I might have been, I think I found that in a foreign paper, maybe over in France or the UK. But it's really just starting to get to me how the roles have reversed. You said a couple shows about, how you hated communism. And for those of us that, were in the Cold War or growing up in the Cold War, I mean, we're the same thing. We have an understanding of what communism really was. And it's unfortunate that communism has gotten into our society in such a way, I'm going to get angry. It did exactly what they said. There's plenty of material out there to go online to find out how it happens. They do it very slowly over time. They've taken over all facets of our society strategically. There's kids, and right now they're in these different organizations. They don't need to be, I want to name them, but they believe they're doing the right thing. And God bless them if they do. But unfortunately, they've been brought up, said more than in the communist side that started back in the 70s when I was in school. I mean, it was just subtle. And by the time I got college age, that's when it really started to get on. But if you've been in school from, I don't know, let's say 1995 going forward, and you've gone through the college system, you were in a college training or communist training camp. I'm getting angry. I can't even think of my words right now. You see the way people act these days, and they have no clue what's really going on. And this has got nothing to do with the whole Democrat and Republican paradigm. Take that out of your mind, because you know what? They've both been corrupted with it. Both of them. I get sick of it. And part of what, Dave, you said a story with 2015, you got out of radio. I kind of have a feeling I know why. Because during Obama's presidency, and Obama just signed a law. He signed a law allowing media to be propaganda outlets. And you can find sources out there if you really want to look into what I'm talking about. You can see where all the local news and all the, like Fox, MSNBC, all of them, you can see them all saying the same thing at the same time. They put 20 people, talking heads from all these different media, and they're all saying the same talking points. It's propaganda. It's communism. And then I come home last night and I got my niece over there, and they're watching a show. It's called Squid Games or something like that. It's a Korean show, but it's about people being in debt to society or something, and they're killing them. They're playing a game. They were in this episode. It's multiple episodes, and kids, this Korean stuff's real popular with kids. So they're playing that red light, green light thing, and they're shooting them. If they move, they shoot them. And I'm going, why is my niece watching this garbage? And why is it? And I got angry with her, but it's not just her. It's all our kids are being corrupted, and they don't even know. They don't even know how close we really are to where that could be reality. That's where it's going. And it's infected everyone. Nobody wants to speak up anymore. They're too afraid. And communists use that to their advantage. Fear makes people do what they want to do. This whole thing with the pandemic and all that stuff, they've made us afraid. They make you afraid you're going to die. How about being afraid that you're not passing on a great society that was built over time? I mean, yeah, it's been corrupted, but unfortunately, we've let it get out of hand where we've made so many laws that it's usurped the Constitution of the United States. And Dave has done a fantastic, if you go back and look at his work on the Constitution, it's fantastic stuff. You should go read it. And maybe you can get an idea of how this country should really be operating. These guys work slowly, methodically, and get into everything. Your workplace, the way we lead each other, the way we treat each other. They divide and conquer. They create the divisiveness. It's time to put aside all the politics. It's time to forgive your neighbor if he's a Democrat or if he's a Republican. It's time to forgive your neighbor if it's somebody that you hate because of race, creed, or religion. None of this really matters. We actually had things going fairly well. We're humans. It's never going to be this perfect utopia society that have been taught to you in these stupid colleges by a math professor or an economics professor that has nothing to do with the subject matter they're teaching. Why are they teaching you about communism and how great it is? And look where we're at. We treat each other with disrespect. Our leaders at work, they use oppressional rules instead of building each other up, instead of taking people that are under you to the next level, making them a better person. We're not doing that. We put them down. We put them with metrics. We treat them like some kind of cog in a machine wheel. And if they don't perform to said metrics, well, it's time to get rid of them, fire them. We don't look at the fact that they got a family, that they got problems. We strap our kids in the last 20 years specifically, and Dave knows this better than anybody. Our economy works because it's heavily in debt. And we sticking with these kids with 4-year degrees, and some of them are to the tune of $200,000 to $250,000 because they mistakenly took these debt when they're 18 years old, and they were told they could use it for anything besides school, and they partied on it, paid for the rent, and did God knows what with that money. And now I'm personally working with people right now that took the 2 years, didn't pay their rent and stuff. And they went to a master's degree program and got themselves in more debt because they got more money to pay for themselves to live, to go back because, well, I need that master's degree because it's going to better me. You're never going to pay that off. And what does that teach your kids? It's just insanity of where our society's gone. The reason I get so angry is because I said 6 patrols locked up. We're basically in jail underwater. And we did it for a reason because we knew what communists was. Communists are killers. And now somehow we've gotten reversed and Putin's a killer. But look what he's doing. Today, he passed a law, which is something we should do. If you get convicted of a pedophile or pedophilia, you go to jail for life. We let these guys make deals. They're out of 2 years. What was that lady back, the teacher? You probably are a radio host at this time, back in Florida. I remember the judge saying, because there's a horrible problem with kids sleeping with their teachers. It's still happening now. But the judge said, I didn't send her to jail because she's too pretty to go to jail.
They said about me. I'm too pretty to go to jail.
Yeah, you're pretty good. That's where we're at. And I know we probably got 150 listeners, so it doesn't really matter. It's not like I'm terrified that somebody's coming to get me. but I'm getting old. My body doesn't work. This is really the best I can do is get on a mic and let people know, you've got people in the military who are willing to defend the Constitution of the United States from enemy, foreign and domestic. And that doesn't mean I'm going to pick up a gun and go shoot up the politicians down the street. It's just, it's a thing that it keeps you free. It gives you free agency. It's a thing to pass on to your children. If you want to be afraid of something, be afraid that you're not passing on a legacy for your children and your grandchildren to be free. I mean, really free. Not to be told what to do or to be conformed to a certain thing because society says you should feel this way. You should feel bad this way. So we can be better human beings and treat each other with respect and honor and all that other good stuff that the military teaches us. Instead, we get out of the military, us veterans, we get out of the military, and we got people that interview us. And I know I've been turned out at some interviews, and it was strictly because I didn't go. They weren't in the military. They feel privileged because of where they went, and they just didn't want that guy, amongst them for whatever reason.
I've never seen that. I've every interview I've ever gone on. I do a lot of career coaching. I've been doing career coaching for 10 years, and I've experienced it. And now being married to my wife, who's Peruvian, and I've been helping out a lot of people from the Hispanic community. I always like, where's the racism? Where's the racism? Now I see it. I get it. It's a problem. Why can't we just all be humans and learn to love your neighbor? Like somebody said in my religion, I don't need to bring that up, but religion's a big thing. That's another. Putin did that too. He restored religion to that's a bad thing. Christianity. Things are. We got people here from other countries. Why do people that are just come to this country and became citizens? Why are they more worried about what's going on than Joe Sixpack down the street who says, "Well, I got my Second Amendment and all my guns, so I'm ready to go." That isn't doing nothing. But the people that are going out to their school board and speaking out, that's doing something. That's what everybody should be doing. You got to stop this because we're right on the edge of being right with the Squid Games where you're playing red light, go light, and you're getting shot because you move. That could be a reality, Dave. That's why I'm mad. Mainly that show last night set me off and made me start thinking, I could probably go for another 20 minutes, but I need to calm down. You got any thoughts? I see a show called Squid Games, and I'm thinking to myself, I've played those once or twice. And I walked into the living room probably, 4 or 5 months ago, and my wife was watching that. And she said, "You should watch this." And I thought, I'm not all that big on TV. And in my world, I know this sounds bizarre, but anything that's popular, like when I was a kid, Lord of the Rings was a huge deal. Reading the Lord of the Rings, everybody refused to read it until like 25 years later because I don't want to be part of the crowd. So no, I have not watched Squid Games because I have no interest in, I haven't seen Game of Thrones. I don't have any interest in that kind of stuff. I'm frustrated with the whole thing because, again, I joined the military, I joined the Navy out of a deep sense of patriotism. This will sound stupid, and I'm embarrassed to even say it, but when I was a teenager, I did colors in my room every morning and every evening. So,
it didn't used to be so stupid. That's the thing.
I live 3 miles from the front gate of Bangor, and we clearly hear colors here. Mm-hmm. And if I'm outside on my street, I stop, come to attention, and salute. Mm-hmm. I'm not outside all the time, but as a general rule of thumb, it's a sense of patriotism and a deep hatred for a system that had destroyed much of what I held to be useful. I grew up with people who had escaped from places like Czechoslovakia and Hungary and heard from their lips those stories. So serving in the Navy, serving as an FTB and making deterrent patrols and essentially aiming nuclear weapons at the Russians was something that I don't want to say it flippantly, but it came naturally to me. It was something that I felt, and that's why it's so hard for me now when people walk up to me and start talking about the benefits of socialism and why we should be socialism. And plus I'm a historian, so I know they don't know anything about it, but the reasons for that go far beyond the scope of even the experts on the sub-vets. So, but I think there are plenty of places to talk about, why it is we don't know these things. And the reason very simply is because people don't want to know it. People want to hear the good things, just like with submarines. All anybody wants to hear is the bad stuff. They don't want, they want to hear the scary stuff. They don't want to hear the boring stuff like, hey, do you know how many times I waxed the Missile Control Center deck because some VIP was coming through who frankly didn't care about the decks, but
painted everything didn't move and some things it did move.
Yeah. So it's a little frustrating and it gets angering, but at the same time, I'm proud of what we did. I believe what we did was necessary and important and right. But I worry sometimes, I served during the first Gulf War, and how many of us that did during that time were frustrated by the decision to stop. And much like the people at the end of World War I said, all this treaty does is guarantee another war. When we stopped then, all it did was guarantee another war. And when we went back, it's like we never learned the lessons of history, just like NASA didn't learn from Apollo 1. You end up with Challenger. So history, it doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And that's part of the scary thing about it. Anyway, that's Eric's rant.
The people here are so diverse here in Denver. And I'm thankful that I moved out here because, there's people from all over the world. And it's just real interesting, just like you said. You got people that came from over at Russia, meeting them in particular, and now they're second guessing, am I in the wrong place? Maybe I need to be back. How crazy is that? Especially people who are my doctor. He had to basically go back to medical school just to practice what he was practicing in Russia, the commitment he made, just to be here and make sure he could raise his kids in a free country. It's just, it's insane.
I still think it's the best place on the planet, and people should be coming here because it's great. So next week, I want to hear from people. I was telling Eric before the show, I have the greatest field day story ever. Field day to me is something that I joke a lot about. If you got time to breathe, you got time to field day. So I have the best field day story ever because we had an XO that was, I love my XO. Don't get me wrong. In fact, as you're going to hear next week on the show, my XO was very good at both playing the game and being a good officer. But he did something on a field day one time I don't think anybody can top. So I want to hear your field day stories. You can call us, tell us you've got them. You leave us a voicemail with your field day story, 360-930-9556. That's 360-930-9556. You can see it on the bottom of the screen there. Or you can you can email me at dolphindave@slipperyfish.com. I didn't enjoy field day, but there's some
nobody enjoys field day, but yeah, there's a lot of comic things with that. Exactly.
And I'm telling you, you can't beat mine. I guarantee you can't beat mine. But you can try, and I'd love to hear it. So leave us a text or a voicemail at that number. And if you need more than one voicemail, just continue on. It's fine. And or email me, dolphindave@slipperyfish.com.
Or if you want to talk about how much you hate communism, you could contact me too at eric@thesubvet.com as well. And well, I guess it's about. I didn't mean to rant like that, but man, I just needed a vent, and I feel better. After you talk things out. I don't know if anything made sense. It probably didn't, but I feel better. So thanks for letting me at this show.
Make sure you check out the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/thesubvet, and join the conversation there.
And when you see the video, like it, smash the ring button, all that good stuff. Make sure you subscribe too. So, well,
see you next week.
Secure for Battle Station's missile. Commence field day.
Hey.